Hi everybody, I'm just going to share my screen here. Can everybody see what I've got on my screen at the moment, which should be a load of logos?
I can see, it looks lovely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Right, I'm just going to get started then, if that's cool. You can still see all these things across the top, yeah?
Yep.
Brill. Hi everybody, thanks for coming. First of all, this is great. I'd love to see so many of you here. My name's Dan Kelby. I'm a character designer and I work in the UK. I'm a freelancer. So I work for studios like the ones that you can see on screen, all from the comfort of my own lovely home here in Norwich, which is on the east coast of the UK. And I'm also a part-time lecturer at the NUA, which is the Norwich University of the Arts here in the city, which is coincidentally the place where I graduated from. So I've kind of gone full circle, graduated quite a long time ago, and now I teach. So it's great. Yeah, I've worked for such companies as Netflix. Most recently, I worked on a show called Dead India, which is coming out hopefully this year, a new animated series as a character designer. I worked for Disney TV Animation a couple of years ago, helping visualize designs for a show that never got the green light, Cartoon Network. I worked for on a show called Apple and Onion, which I think has run for about 2 seasons. And I did a Star Wars illustration book, which I'm really proud of, right back at the start of my career, kids illustrations, kids book. NUA Digital is a studio in Belgium that I've done work for, and coincidentally, this isn't a lie, today I got email from them. They sent me the trailer for the film that I worked on 2 years ago, which is my first 3D animated movie, so it was really cool to watch that earlier on. And Passion is a studio in London that do animation for TV, film, and advertising. So I've worked for quite a lot of different companies, but that's just a little bit about me. Anyway, today we're going to talk about caricature, and caricature is a massive part of character design. As a character designer, it's my job to filter everything that I see through my own artistic tastes and inspirations, and then create drawings that reflect my view of the world, which is what caricature is all about. So just before we start doing the fun drawing part of today, I just want to run through this really quickly. I'm in Photoshop, by the way, which I will be conducting the demo in and the drawing and all that lovely stuff. If you're working digitally, you can use Procreate or Clip Studio or any digital program that has layers that you can draw in. If you're working on pencil and paper, that's fine as well. I'll give you pointers as we go along to say, you know, what you can be doing traditionally to keep up with me when I'm working in the computer, because I know that not everybody has digital stuff. Anyway, back to caricature. So what is caricature? Well, when you say caricature to the average person on the street, you get this kind of definition on the screen here, which is basically caricature is a picture description or an imitation of a person which certain striking characteristics are exaggerated in order to create a comic or grotesque effect. So what does that mean? Well, it's these, isn't it? You normally think about this kind of stuff when you hear the word caricature, which is, you know, I'm not belittling this art form in any way whatsoever. In fact, this is a really difficult art form to get right. You know, maintaining the likeness of a person whilst exaggerating their features is really hard. If we look over here at like Benedict Cumberbatch and Paul Hollywood and people like that, you know, they look like the people. They've just been extremely pushed. I mean, this in the middle is just nightmare fuel, let's be honest with it. And so is this one in the top right. I'm not really a big fan of the way that these things look, you know, the big heads and the tiny bodies. But again, they do have a place in the artistic world. But for the purposes of today, we're not going to talk about that. So when I talk about caricature and animation, I'm referring to the exaggeration of life in general. And that means everything from vehicles to props to sets to characters to environments to everything. Everything that you see on screen in an animated production, whether that be 2D or 3D or stop motion. So a good example of an animated production with really good caricature is Klaus, which is a 2D, 3D hybrid animated film that came out on Netflix a couple of years ago. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's fantastic. And if we look at these images on screen at the moment, this is a great idea of caricature in environment design. So these houses are super pushed, right? They're not like houses that we see in real life. They're really squished, they're really stretched. The film is a fantasy, so that just comes with the baggage of being like an exaggeration of life, right? It's a stylized version of reality. So these houses kind of look like hats because a lot of the people in the city in the movie wear hats and sort of old period like Victorian clothing. The characters that live in these tall buildings are quite tall and thin themselves, so the buildings are reflecting the characters' personalities and their physicalities. When the main character goes to this location at the start of the movie, it's really hostile towards him. So that's why there's loads of points on all these buildings, you know, to denote kind of like teeth and fins and things that are dangerous in nature, sharp edges. And if we look at things like the environment design, you know, we've got this super exaggerated stylized curve to the top of these trees and hedges and bushes, these rolling hills. Even the stagecoach here is kind of stretched tall and pushed in thin. And this is all to evoke a mood in the viewer, right? It's to give an emotional reaction. If we look at these trees here, you know, these trees don't look like any trees that we know in real life, especially the trunks. Look, these sort of excellent curves and balls that are coming out the top. These really, really lovely silhouettes are all designed to design graphically to put across a vibe in us when we're watching it. You know, this is a mysterious scene. It's been lit in a certain way. But this is a great movie to look at in terms of caricature. If you look at the character designs for it as well, they're super duper push, which is what I love. And a great artist to look at if you want to think about caricature in the broad sense for illustration, for example, is a man called Ronald Searle. And he was a British cartoonist that used to do a book called St. Trillions and Molesworth, which is this little character here. And he was basically an editorial illustrator. And he's an excellent example of somebody who would caricature a type, meaning a type of person. You know, everybody in these images here, they're not specific people. It's not like he's got a model to sit down and he's trying to get a likeness for them. He's taken what he's observed of humans throughout his entire life and put them into the drawing. So, you know, for example, on this one in the top left here, this sort of businessman here, he's got the hunched shoulders and his face is all squashed up and he's got this massive chin, you know, two chins there and a little tiny hat on top, contrasting with this kind of showgirl that he's got on his arm with the animal furs. And you can see that the way that he's hunched the shoulders up and everything, that's a caricature of how that man would walk. You know, somebody in real life like that wouldn't walk like this with their, you know, their eyes scrunched up and their shoulders up here. But the whole point of animation is that it's the exaggeration of life. And this is what we're doing when we caricature certain archetypes. You know, I hope nobody's cat looks like this, but this is a great kind of caricature version of what a cat might look like. And I'm sure that we all know an old lady who this reminds us of, right? We don't know the specific old lady, but he's taken things like the squinty eyes and the eye bags and the pointy nose and the kind of almost like crescent moon shaped chin jutting out to push that mood in us, the viewer. And if we look at animation in general, it transfers over to films like Inner Workings, which is a Disney short that they put on before Moana a few years ago. If you're not familiar with the film, all of these characters on screen here are office workers, and they work in this kind of oppressive, boring, regimented environment. So they've all been designed as squares and cubes. You know, they're meant to evoke the feelings of these old computer monitors that are just basically boxes, right? So they've done boxy people. They've straightened off the tops of the heads. Even the features are really geometric, and the way that the shoulders come over here and just like the squared off shoes, things like that. I mean, even the tie look is basically two boxes on top of each other. And in animation and illustration, any kind of stylized art form, these are the kind of things that you want to be putting into your work in order to create an emotional reaction in the viewer. You know, if you're designing an office worker for animation, unless the style called for it, you wouldn't really go for a realistic looking one. You want to push it to something like this. The characters in Madagascar, for example, you know, a lion's mane isn't this shape in real life, but the designer has looked at lions and exaggerated the shapes of their heads, which is what we're going to do when we do the demo in a minute. You can look at the ears and things like that. They're all very, very straight and sharp. These giant hands have all been pushed because lions' paws are big, right? So that's a caricature of the physicality of an actual lion in real life. We look at somebody like, I'm going to murder this name, apologies, Diana Marzigliese. She's Italian. She works for Pixar. She does amazing kind of background characters for the designs of the films. These are from Incredibles 2. So she's just obviously drawn a load of people here, but you can see that they're all really, really pushed. You know, you've got the tiny eyes on this lady here. You've got this guy's massive kind of chin button out, the huge glasses, the exaggeration of the distance between this man's nose and his top lip. You know, these aren't real things in real life, but they help us to, they remind us of people that we may have seen, especially good for background characters. You know, if you do want to be a character designer or you're just or an illustrator, for example, it's good to get into the habit of observing people from life if you can, whenever you're out and about, you know, when we can go out and about, on the bus, you know, around the shops, just like your family members, and just really try and dial into the visual side of people, you know, how they gesticulate, and, you know, if they're wearing giant glasses or a tiny little hat, and how they have the collar on their shirt. Things like that are the little details that as a character designer you pick up on and that you put into the designs for the films. Oh yeah, and these are just some of the great examples. Like these, even the proportions of the body are really caricatured. Look, this lady on the right hand side here, she's really been slimmed down and stretched out. She's got a really high waistband and really long legs. So it does actually extend to the whole figure and not just the face. So, I mean, having said all that, I'd say that the new definition, this is my definition of caricature, rather than be this that we looked at the start, is going to be more, caricature to me is the exaggeration of life for the purposes of entertainment. And again, that can be vehicles, props, environments, buildings, you know, anything of ours, things like that. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to do characters because that's my bag. So finally, before we start drawing, the principles of caricature for animation, meaning animation design mainly, it's these three principles that I always try and think of, which is exaggeration. So that's pushing reality and taking what you see and trying to filter it through almost like a prism of, well, exaggeration, just pushing things up and down, left and right, changing the distances between features on a character if they've got sort of larger ears than normal, like really pushing them out, not being afraid to make things too crazy because you can always dial them back again. Contrast, which is to do with proportions. So again, if a character's got, for example, a large nose, you can draw the nose large, but in order to make it feel larger, you can also shrink the other features to compensate. So that's what proportion is all about. And finally, abstraction, so that's shape design. If a character has a pointy nose, you know, draw it as a triangle. If a character has round ears, you know, you draw them round. Don't get into all the nuances of kind of like skin bumps and folds. And remember that caricature and character design in general is like the sort of filtering out of extraneous detail and more about like, what is the root of this person that I'm going to draw in this character? What is their personality? The whole point of it is to get their personality across to the viewer and sell the story, right? So lecture over. I hope that wasn't too dull. Just a little preamble to what we're going to do. So, don't say that.
Just quickly, Dan. Thank you for such a wonderful explanation. We've just had a couple of people ask in the chat if you could say the name again of the Italian artist who works for Disney.
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to say it again. You could probably just spell it.
Okay, I'll type it out. It's Diana. Oh, she works for Pixar. She does have an Instagram and everything, and it's Diana Marzigliese. Marzigliese, I believe is I don't know. That's not how you pronounce it. I'll leave that up there.
Bro, thank you.
Yeah, if you just type that in and then type in Pixar into Google, like it'll probably be close enough if I haven't spelt it right, and then you can go into the other great
Sweet.
stuff. She was, I think, lead on Luca, the most recent Pixar film, which if you haven't seen it is lovely, so go and watch that. And The Art of Book, which I've got behind me, is really great. It's full of her designs, and she's just got this incredible, she works in lots of different media, like digital and pen and paper and collage and stuff, so check her out, she's amazing. Right, so again, I'm going to be doing this digitally, but if you have just pencil and paper, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to split my window so that you can have the reference up all the time while we're going through the demo, because what I tend to do is zoom in and out quite a little bit. If you're working on pencil and paper, I'll give you pointers along the way about what you can be doing to sort of work along with me. If you look at the Padlet link, if it's been given to you, I've given 10 references of people and 10 references of animals. I'm going to do the animals afterwards. You can pick any of them. You can choose the same one as me if you want to, or you can work on something else. I'm going to teach you the principles first, because what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how I break down the image visually, and then caricature it from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw over the image, pick out the major shapes, and then I use that and the reference at the same time to inform my new drawing. Because character design and design in general is all about, like I said, it's about filtering the world through a more simple prism, if you like, in your mind. And I've reached a stage where I can do it automatically. Like I can look at a car and I can sort of break it down in my head into like, oh, how would I draw that? What shapes would I use? But if you're just starting out, especially, it's quite difficult, because something like this, you know, there's so many folds in this headscarf. He's got such a complicated expression, you know, there's a lot of light going on. So I'm going to show you a way to simplify all that and sort of like filter it out of your mind, and then just focusing on the important details. Like I said, I'm going to do a person first, and then I'm going to do an animal. And the reason why I do this as practice is because it just builds up my visual library. The images that I showed you before, especially from this lady here, who I won't pronounce her name again, you can see that sheet that I did, and it's just full of faces. So I'm always practicing drawing faces off like Pinterest or Google Images. Pinterest is probably the best, pinterest.com, and just type in interesting faces, and you'll come up with a load of great reference images like the ones that I put in the Padlet. I always try and draw an image that I have an instant kind of like, oh yeah, I want to draw that from, because there's no point in drawing anything that you're bored by just as an exercise. Because if you want to improve, I find that you have to find references that you're really passionate about, and you know you want to work from. You want to draw this guy. So I practice this so that when it comes to me designing a character for a TV show or a movie or whatever, I've kind of got a bank of people in my head that I've drawn, that I've practiced to draw from. Because I'm not going to copy a reference to come up with a new character design, because that would just be copying, right? This is more of an exercise to do for you to practice drawing people, and for you to practice simplifying things down, and just building up your visual library in general. So what we'll do is we will commence.
Just quickly, Dan,
yeah.
We've had a couple of questions in the chat about doing a quick intro into what you're going to use in Photoshop.
Yeah, sure.
Is that something you're going to cover?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Cool.
And please do ask questions, by the way, everybody. I can't see you and I can't see the chat. So if you do have any questions, please just pipe up. I'm using the latest Photoshop. Doesn't really matter which one you're using. I'm using, people always ask about my tablet. I'm using a Cintiq, which is a big pen display, i.e. what you're seeing on screen now is also seen on this thing that I'm drawing on. And I can just draw on literally on the screen with this pen. Some people have like a tablet on their desk, and then they look at a screen and they draw on the tablet. The image isn't reflected on the screen, so that's fine as well. Some people have an iPad. You can draw straight on that screen for that if you've got the iPad Pro. So I've just basically, if we just look at my file structure here, I've got my reference on the left-hand side that I'm just going to leave there. I'll split the window in a moment. These layers here, we'll get to in a sec. I've just made a new layer at the top called layer 1, so I'll call that sketch. And what I'm using in terms of brushes, it doesn't really matter, honestly. I would use something, I'm using just like basically a sketching pencil, which is something like this. So the harder I press, the darker it goes. The lighter I press, the sort of thinner the line and the lighter the mark, if you like. But if you're in Photoshop and you have the brushes menu, which is in Window, Brushes, wherever it appears on your screen. If you go into the general brushes, I think it should be a little window here. If you pick something like the hard round pressure size might be good. That's just a sort of thick and thin line, or even the soft round pressure. That would be better actually, the soft round pressure one. Because what we're going to do is we're just going to sketch it out. We're not going to like go to final line artwork, mainly for the purposes of time, and just because it's more about teaching you the principles. So you can use any brush you want to. Obviously, if you're not in Photoshop, then you will be using different brushes anyway. But anything that's got like a bit of pen pressure on it, and a tapered line if you can. But I'm just going to be using big shapes first. So hopefully that answers that question. Right. So what we can do first, we're going to break the image down. So if you're working traditionally, what I would do now is I would have my image, say, printed out. And then you could either use a light box for this stage, or you could hold up to a window, lay another sheet of paper over the top of it. But in Photoshop, what we can do is, and please forgive me if I'm teaching, you know, a grandma to suck eggs, that great phrase. If I'm basically going to be operating this as if you haven't done this before and you're new to Photoshop, because I find that a lot of people ask me, oh, how did you do that? And if I do anything and you miss it and you want to know, then please speak up. So I'm going to hit the new layer icon, which is this little plus next to the bin, to create a new layer, and then double click on that, and I'm just going to call it white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit D on my keyboard, which makes this, which resets these swatches down here. Then if you hit X, it will flip it from black to white at the front. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this white layer. So if you get the paint bucket, which is usually hidden behind the gradient tool, and then, hang on, should I fill it with white, and then at the top here where it says opacity, if you just slide this down to whatever you, around about 30 or 40%, so that you can see the image underneath it. This would be your paper going over the top if you're working traditionally. And then create another layer above that, and I've called it red line because I'm going to be using a red line. But you'll see why in a second. So first of all, I'm just going to split my window so that this reference is on screen at all times. There we go. Okay, so now I can zoom in and out of this one whilst leaving this one on the left-hand side up. So what we want to do first, I would zoom out because it's easy to see the big shapes of a tracing if you're zoomed out rather than being zoomed in on the details. I would just literally start to draw over this, like what are the main shapes of this character, and don't get caught up in any of the details. So he's got this big round, is it a turban or a headscarf? I'm not sure. So the shape here, his ear is kind of like this shape, nose and his eyes, rough sort of circles, but they have sort of got a bit of squintiness to them. The nose is sort of like a triangle like this. Remember, we're thinking about things, we're trying to flatten this out. The mouth is just a sort of small slit there. And the beard is just, that's a round circle, isn't it? So if you're doing this traditionally, this is what you would just trace over. You can use another pencil. And then if we hide that bottom layer, that's the basic outline. We've got this shape coming down here, and he's got a little collar. I'm not too bothered about the body of these characters. Eyebrows. And that is about it. So that took what, like 30 seconds. Zooming out, with that layer selected, I'm going to hit V on the keyboard, which is the selection tool up here. It's like a cross shape, which says this underneath is talking. And then I'm going to drag it over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then hide my white layer because I want to see the reference in sort of its full glory now. I'm going to select my red line layer. I'm going to hit, I'm on a Mac, so for me it's Command T. On a PC it would be Control T, that's transform. And then holding down the Shift key, I'm just going to resize this. If you hold down the Shift key, it does it in proportion. You know, you won't, if you don't hold down the Shift key, then it will squash about all over the shop. You don't want to do that. Then just double click it or hit enter. And I'm going to put it over here because I want to basically see both of these at once. I want to see my reference on the left, and I want to see my breakdown of it on the right. I mean, this is very, very simplified, but that's the whole point. When I look at this chap on the left here, this is what I see in my head, and that sounds a bit bizarre, but I've trained my eye to the degree where I'm like, oh, circle, circle, you know, triangle nose, straight line for the scarf, round beard. You know, that's what I see when I look at him. So what I will do then is, if you're working traditionally, take your tracing and put it on the table in front of you, and then put the reference to another side, or look at the screen if you're doing it on here. And then I would literally just flick my eye between the two, but mainly my red line that I've just done. And I would just start to sort of lay in what I've done. So let's select this. So remember his scarf is kind of big. If you're drawing circles, draw from the shoulder if you can, or the elbow. Don't draw from your wrist because the wrist restricts your motion. You can't draw a fluid circle with your wrist laying on a bit of paper or the screen because you haven't got that kind of freedom. So always try and sort of draw from your arm, and it's easier on your wrist anyway. I want this headscarf to be big. So let's bring his.
We had a question, Dan, about what you're wearing on your hand.
Oh, it's like an anti-static glove. is to stop my hand sticking to the screen, because I'm drawing on the pen display, and sometimes these can get quite hot. So human skin can sort of stick to it, and when you're drawing, you know, big shapes, you don't want your hand to sort of stop halfway through. So it's kind of like a friction guard. Yeah, I used to have I used to have a cotton glove because it was cheap, and I just cut the fingers off it. I bought these cotton gloves from this chemist here in the UK because they were cheaper than these gloves and than these special ones. And I used to cut the fingers and the thumb off it and use those because, like, you know, I'm a starving artist. So you can see they've got this triangle that I've got here, but I'm going to widen it out. Whenever I'm designing characters, the number one thing I remember, which is a great piece of advice that a character designer once told me, which is like, animation is exaggeration. I know that's a really simple kind of trite phrase, but it's so true. It's like, you know, I don't want to draw this guy exactly as I see him. You know, I'm trying to think about his emotions. Like, he's got really sort of hooded eyes. He's looking a bit worried, I think, at the camera maybe. But his eyes, you know, the sort of graphical representation of an eye is this, isn't it? You know, and he's got that eyebrow like that. But I'm not going to draw it like that because this is cartoons. So I've got an eraser on the end of my pen, by the way, so I can just sort of flip it round, which I'm super good at, by the way. It's just years of practice. Like, anyway,
I love the modesty.
Yeah, well, if I can do one thing, it's that. We can see that this guy has lots of, you know, he's obviously been in the sun quite a lot. He's got lots of, well, I guess it's sort of sun damage, isn't it? He's very wrinkly. And in order to push his expression, we can see these frown lines he's got on his head there. I mean, he looks really worried. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push his eyebrows up like that, because he's kind of looking a bit sad for some reason. The nose, I'm going to sort of show like this, and his mouth, I'm going to put up there, because again, it's all about pushing those kind of shape relationships. The beard, I'm going to sort of exaggerate loads because that's fun. The nose, I'll simplify actually by doing this. If you want to ask any questions while I'm just sort of noodling around on this now, then please do.
I've got a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
How did you get into your job? How did you get into doing this as a?
Well, I started out, like I say, I was at the art college that I'm now teaching at, and I graduated from there, and then I went into graphic design, which seems to be something that like everybody does when they leave art college. Well, it certainly was back in the day. This was a long time ago. This was 20 years ago, showing my age. And I couldn't, the internet wasn't really a thing back then. This was like 2001. I mean, it was about, but it wasn't like super duper like what it is now. You know, there weren't any sort of tutorials really. There was no YouTube. So I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? And there weren't any animation studios in Norwich. And it was like, well, I can't move to London because I haven't got any money. So I went and worked in graphic design. I did that for 10 years at a live events company. And then I got so, you know, sick of that world. And I rediscovered drawing because I sort of stopped drawing for about 10 years after I graduated. So don't ever do that, folks. And I just sort of retrained myself online. By that time, the internet had become more of a thing. And I just started posting my work on social media, mainly Instagram. And my first few jobs I got from LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of like a, people hate using LinkedIn, me included. It's not really that fun. Yeah, it's just kind of an intimidating, you know, business website, isn't it? But that was the place where I got my first few jobs. That's where the Star Wars illustration book came from. And then after that, it just kind of snowballed. I went to a convention in America called CTNX, which is it's an animation expo, and met some people there. But all the time I was posting my work on social media, and just gradually building like a really tiny following. Like I'm no celebrity by any means, believe me. I don't have like thousands and thousands of followers. And then it's that typical thing of like one job kind of led to another, and people refer each other a lot of the time in this industry. Like if I can't do work, I'll refer one of my other character designer friends, because the animation industry is small. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. It's you know, people do sort of get to know each other quite quickly. And so you develop these relationships, especially if you go to like a convention, because you meet these people face to face. And yeah, so we recommend each other for jobs and things, or find work through. I don't do commissions or anything, but I just yeah, get quite a few referrals. I know that's not really helpful to people out there, because it's all about like, how did you get into it? But you find that once you get that sort of first job, the others sort of do tend to follow quite quickly. And yeah, my big break was for Cartoon Network, and that was actually, I did that through like my own steam, because they have a submissions page on their website for like people who just want to submit things, you know, say, oh, you know, I'm available for work if you've got any shows coming up, and then I give them my portfolio link. And 2 days later, they email me back, like, oh, we like your stuff. Do you want to work on this show? Do you want to test for this show, I should say, which was Apple and Onion. And I was like, yeah, sure. Never worked on a show before, but yeah.
Solid.
Yeah, I'll do it. Whatever, you know, I'll sweep the floors. Virtually, because they're in America, with a very long broom. Yeah, so I tested for that show, which basically involved, I had a week, they sent me loads of stuff to do, like I had to do a character turnaround, and I had to design a character and style of the show. And then I had a week to do it, and then I sent it back, and they came back and went, yeah, great. When can you start? And I was like, yeah, like now. So yeah, that was it. And that was my first kind of big break. That was really cool. TV's very fast paced in comparison to movies. But it was a really great learning experience. And every job that you do is a learning experience. Like you learn new ways to do things like turnarounds or you know, lessons on, like you'll learn how to design better the more jobs you do. So it's kind of like a, I don't know, like a sort of cycle in a way. Like the more jobs you do, the better you get. It's the same thing. Sure. The more you practice, you know, the better you get. I'm just going to hide this now. Yeah. So, and then after that, Disney randomly contacted me one day because they'd seen my work on Instagram, which kind of goes to show the, you know, the benefits of social media again. That was fantastic.
Magic.
Sorry?
Magic.
Magic, yeah, definitely magic. Yeah, that was a great job as well. It's just a shame that it never got produced, because I can't even show anything from it because of my contract with them. Because when you work for a studio, you sign what's called an NDA, which means a non-disclosure agreement, and that basically means that you can't show any work from it whilst it's in production. And some contracts are even, like Disney, are like, oh, you can't show anything like ever if the show doesn't get produced. Usually Disney artists, you'll notice that they start to show all their work when like a film comes out, like when Frozen 2 came out. All of a sudden there's just a big like influx on social media of all the artists going, yay, the film's out, now I can show you all the work from it. But in my case, it was a TV show that never got made. It was they call it a heritage project, which basically was a TV show based on one of their old movies. It was like a modern spin on, you know, one of the classic Disney films. And it was a real shame because it was a really great film, one of my faves. And it would have been a really awesome project, but it got all the way to, I was designing characters. Like I thought that I would be doing like grunt work, but they were like, oh no, here's 3 characters to design. I was like, oh cool, great. One of them was a main. And then, yeah, I did the work for them. They really liked it. And then I didn't hear anything for a while, like literally this is how it can go. And then in the end, they were like, I think I emailed them one day and I was like, is this happening? And they were like, oh no, that didn't go through. And it's such a shame because I saw all the great like production work that had gone into it, and all the amazing other designs and stuff. And I was like, oh man, this show's gonna be so awesome. And then it's just like, no. So, and that's it.
Also, I imagine a good experience just the same.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And and also more importantly, kind of validation in a way. Like I was, because everybody, me included, I'm sure, has imposter syndrome to a certain degree, and I have it now. Like I don't think it'll ever go away, but it's just one of those things. And so for them to contact me, like little me in England, I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you got the right person? And even as I was doing the job, I was like, because I knew somebody at Disney who I'd met when I was actually over at the convention, and I was like, I was like, do they really like my stuff? He was like, yeah, don't worry. They really like, and I was sort of saying to him, because I was emailing him, so I was like, is everything I'm doing all right? And they were like, he was like, yes. Stop asking me. He's like, you're fine. Don't worry. They wouldn't have emailed you otherwise.
Yeah.
For me, it's like this little guy from the UK who's never, who's worked on one TV show, and it's like, why would you even, like, the amount of artists that there are in the world, especially on things like Instagram, which is kind of one of my bugbears. It's like, it's so easy to get disenfranchised and like intimidated by other artists. Because everybody's amazing these days, and
Sure.
it's true. And it's like, why would they pick me? But I mean, hopefully that kind of story inspires somebody, because it's like, I'm not the best artist in the world. I don't consider myself the best designer in the world or anything. I'm quite humble about it. But that was a big deal for me, and it was kind of like, I guess I am sort of suited to this job. I'm not just sort of kidding myself. So yeah, don't ever be afraid to like put yourself out there. And rejection is a big part of this job. Like, for every Disney that's contacted me or Cartoon Network that I've worked for, there's been 10 clients that have just never even replied, and that's no reflection on me as a person or reflection on me as an artist. Like, sometimes it can be something simple as like scheduling. They need an artist for like next week, and I've applied, and it's like, well, I'm not available for a month, so they ain't gonna hire me, right? Or my style isn't right for the show, or or they probably got somebody in mind that they were hoping to get, but they're just kind of like, playing it safe and putting the feelers out to other artists in case that person doesn't work out. Or sometimes the thing might get cancelled, like the Disney show. So to anybody who's kind of either going through it now, who's watching, or who's worried about, what if I don't get a job and stuff. Sadly, it is kind of part of it. You just have to keep throwing your rod out there. You just have to keep.
For sure.
Imagine it's like you've got like a handful of, I don't know, confetti, and you just like, it's like some of it might come back, and some of it might just get blown away to the horizon. But you just got to keep throwing your endless bag of confetti out there, everybody. That's my one thing away from this workshop today. It's that. And I've never said that before, but I'm going to patent it now, so nobody steal it. Applying for art jobs is like throwing a bag of confetti into the wind. It's not. But yeah, so don't ever I know it's really hard, especially if you see your friends getting jobs, or you see like, somebody who like objectively like, well, I'm better than them, even though like never think like that, because it's not good to be arrogant in this job. I never think like that. You can have opinions on other people's work, but don't get on your high horse about it. I'm always like of the opinion where I'll apply for something, and if I don't get it, it's like, okay, well, they went with something else, next job. I don't take it personally, because I guess it's because it's happened so much. And a lot of the times I'm not a pessimist, but I'm a realist, I guess, because I do live in the UK, and being a freelancer is fantastic. And with the internet, you can work for companies overseas. But if it's an in-house position in Los Angeles, they're going to hire somebody from Los Angeles or from somewhere in America, because they're not going to pay me to emigrate to America and go and put me up in a house, and you know what I mean. So sometimes it's just logistics, but that's not meant to detract from the fact that you can do this remotely, because I've done it for the past 6 years. I've worked for studios, named studios, if you like, from this room. I wish I was in a studio, because I like people, but you can do it through email and stuff, and Zoom calls and all that stuff. I mean, the Netflix show I did, Dead India, I worked on for like 6 months, and that was when lockdown happened, and the studio was in London, so they all went home, and it was just done remotely. So I used to check in, even though it was in the UK, I used to check in every week for a meeting, through Skype with somebody in London. And I think that the pandemic is probably quite good for demonstrating that this is a feasible way of getting a show made. It's not the ideal way, but it's it's a good thing.
We've had some really lovely comments in the chat that I feel I should just relay to you. Because they're really nice. So George has put, not a question, but I took a look at your website and I love your work, Dan.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. That's always lovely to hear. Thank you.
Kira has put, the story has inspired me as I have doubts if I will be able to make it in the art community. The worst thing to do is comparing yourself to others. And it's too easy to do that in the artist community. So if you're reading this, I want you all to know that your art style is original and no one else has it. So keep it close.
Well, that's true. Like nobody draws like you, even though,
exactly.
like, you know, even though you, and that's the thing about style. Like, sorry to jump on, but, and I know that I've got to move on to my next demo in a second. Don't worry. But style is something that a lot of artists get hung up on. I just want to put a pin in this while we've got it. Especially younger artists are like, oh, what's my style? I don't know what style is, and they're so worried about it. And style isn't something that you just get all of a sudden. It's not. It's something that's accumulated through years of drawing. And style it's like caricature. It's like a filter of your view of the world that you then regurgitate onto the page, to put it in a lovely sense. You know, I like stuff from the 80s because I was born in the 80s. I like bright colors because the 80s had bright neon colors and like animal print and stuff, and like heavy metal music, and that's the sort of stuff that I put into my work because that's me. You know, it's even things like the foods that you like and the people that you associate with. You know, your favorite books and movies and films. I'm into like cyberpunk stuff, so I try and put a lot of like those bright neon colors into my work. You know, you wouldn't think that from looking at my work, but that's arguably a result of my style, right? And I think a lot of people are like, I've got to get an art style, I've got to get an art style. And it's like, I would say, especially if you're starting out, just kind of pop that to the side for a few years, and just draw, because it will come out. You know, it's based on everything that you look at, the shows that you love, the movies that you like, whether it's anime or Disney or Sony or stop motion, you know, blooming Count Duckula from the 80s, whatever. That's a deep cut for those out there. It's stuff like that, you know, stuff from your childhood. It'll come to the surface eventually. So I say my big advice to people that are hung up about getting a style and worried about not having one is that just draw, because like you will come out in your work eventually. I've been drawing. I'm 40 years old. I've been drawing since I was you know, like a speck. And I only feel like my style has come out in the last like 2 years. And another important thing is like I'm fully okay with it changing over the years, because like the work that I was doing 2 years ago looks nothing like my work now. It looks like a different artist, but art to me is all about pushing boundaries and trying new things. And like, what happens if I use this really bright color? Oh, cool, I like that. I'll use it in my work. What happens if I use this bright color? Oh, I don't like it. I won't use it again. You know, it's like testing stuff out. Like what I'm doing. Sorry, I know that I've stopped drawing. Like what I'm doing here, like I'm using the lasso tool and I'm using the transform because I'm squashing this man's eye up because I want to see what it looks like. You know, and I push his expression, but what I can do is I can use the liquify tool now. So I can, if I'm in Photoshop, I can go to filter liquify. I hope it'll appear like this. And then this is a good way of pushing your designs, by the way, if you haven't done it before, because you can always go back. You know, I can use the liquify tool. I'm using the little pointy finger up here. I've got a really big brush size, and I can just pull this turban out, headscarf, whatever it is, and I can just like push these shapes around. I can give them a point if I want to, or I can make it round. I quite like that. That's cool. Make the brush a bit smaller. Let's make the beard bigger and see what happens. Because that's the joy of digital art, right? You can just mess about with it. If you're working traditionally as well, you can just lay another piece of paper on top of this and try something else, like do a new drawing. I can't tell you how much of character design is just reworking stuff. You never get the design right the first time, especially if you're working for an art director, because I just send it back with loads of changes, and that's another thing that you've got to get used to. And again, that's not a reflection on you as a designer. It's not like, oh, I didn't get it right the first time. It's a process. It's a collaboration. Animation is made, you know, by a team of people, and they've all got, you know, the people in charge have got their vision for the show or the film or whatever, and it's your job to kind of get it out and visualize it for them, which involves going backwards and forwards a lot, you know, changing things, characters getting cancelled that you've designed for like weeks because the script has changed. So yeah, so just that, then, you know, while I was gabbing on, then we hit the preview tick. This is far more funny because his beard's huge. I pushed the proportions, like I made the turban bigger, which is made it almost look smaller. That's what I was saying about proportion. So I just hit OK. And let's say that's my final design. So I know I've got I'm conscious that I've got to actually draw on this presentation. It's not like Dan's Q&A waffle session, is it? But please do keep the questions coming, so I interrupted. But first of all, that's my person. I don't know which ones you all drew. but please put them in the Padlet because I want to see them.
I'm just going to share the Padlet link again now, just so everyone has it.
I mean, what I would do now from this stage is that I would basically, I'd make a new layer above this. I mean, it's quite a clean sketch for how I like it. I'd make a new layer above it, and I would select my sketch layer. I would bring it down in opacity like this, and then I'd lock it to make sure I don't draw on it accidentally, which is up there. And then on this new layer above it, I would just go in and I would clean it up, and then you could move to color after that. But if you were submitting it for an art director, this would be enough to send to them. Like, but you would do like 10 of these, 10 different ideas, and you'd be like, oh, here's my first idea, here's my 10th idea, and then they pick one, and sometimes they like mix them together. So that's why we just sometimes sketch in the early days, because it's just a lot quicker. It's all about getting as many drawings done as you can, because it's all time dependent because of budgets and things. So that's what I would do for a person. I'm just going to do an animal, same process. So like I say, please keep the questions coming. So I picked this lovely Frenchie because he's cute and he's turning. I can see his body shape in my head. I'm going to exaggerate those ears. The hoodie is kind of arbitrary at this point. I didn't pick it because of that, but that's a cool character point. You could probably put a funny logo or something on the back of it, or obviously change the colors. That's another important thing. Don't be beholden to your reference. So on this one, I could change the color of his beard. I could make him look younger if I wanted to. I could put some like earrings in his ears or something. I could change his costume. This is just a starting point. So that's why I do this as practice, because this will spark a new idea. Maybe I'll change this into a female character. Maybe I'll turn it into an animal character. But because I've gone through this process and done these shapes, it's like I can transpose that onto other designs from what I've learned. Which is why I do this so often as a character designer. It's all about representing and exaggerating life, like I said. So again, for the dog, we're going to do the same thing. The great thing about Frenchies, sorry,
no? Just a quick one. Could you just explain how to change the brush color? We've got someone who's stuck on white and they can't.
Yeah, sure. Are they in Photoshop?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, if you're in Photoshop, let's say you're on white, which is D. Okay, so let's say I'm like, oh no, I want to use black. You can just tap this square down here. You see where my cursor is, and it'll bring up the color picker, and then you can just drag that all the way to the black, and you can select different colors by sliding this up and down, and you can pick blue or purple or whatever you want to. A quick way in Photoshop, again, of resetting your swatch palette, which is what this thing down here is called. So let's say you've got red and green and you're like, I want to go back to black now. A really quick way of switching those back is just by hitting D on the keyboard. That's the shortcut, and it'll switch it to the default, which is black and white. So think about D as default. That's what it can stand for. And then if you want to swap these colors around, you can either click this little right angle here, or you can press X and it'll swap them around.
Woo! I'm learning so much.
I'm all about the shortcuts. Yeah, so I mean, this brush here that I was using, this might throw people. I mean, I basically got this brush saved that's red already, but if I was going from black, again, I would just tap that middle square and then I would just select the red, because it defaults as red as the starting color. Just go into the top right hand corner and then just pick that, that'll do. It doesn't have to be red, it can be blue, or as long as you can see it over the reference, that's all that matters. So for this dog, he's got this really flat skull. And look at the angles that he's got here, like this. I really want to get those into my version. He's got these lovely big round ears that have got this kind of bump here, so I want to push that. Straight there. In character design, we've got a thing that's called straights and curves. So when you design something like this ear, you can see that obviously this dog's ear is round, right? Because we can see on this view here, they're like a sort of semicircle. But when they turn in perspective, they go more straight. So as a designer, rather than let's zoom in a bit, rather than being caught up in all these like little bumps here that are on the ear, I'm just going to do a straight line. Because I'm sifting out all the information that I don't want. And then at the top, I can have a curve around here. So we've got a straight and a curve, and it's the contrast between these two shapes that create visual interest in the viewer. I mean, this is more interesting from a graphical point of view than that, because there's no contrast. So whenever I'm doing character designs, and especially draw overs like this, I'm trying to look for straight edges and curves to go in contrast. Like for example, curve on his body there, and then I might put a straight along the bottom because he's sitting and he's sort of squashed. I am gonna push this kind of butt out because it's a dog butt. I've got to. But let's push it out. But actually, we'll do that when we draw it. So let's do a straight there. Oh, look, it's got a tail. Really simple. Again, don't take too long when you do this. And if you can, do it while you're zoomed out, because otherwise you get caught up on all the details. So his face is like a sort of triangle with a rounded top, isn't it? Like that, a bit flat here. And the nose is sort of round. It's got this V shape. It helps sometimes to think about like, oh, what does that look like? You know, it looks like that. You know, does it look like a fish, or does it look like, you know, a bat? You know, would that be the dog's nose from the front? Just to remind yourself of like, oh yeah, that dog's nose looks like that. That'll, if you don't have the dog in front of you, you can be like bat shape, draw that. That helps me a lot. He's got these great kind of creases. I will put the hood in again, like a curve and then a straight across there. And he's got these lovely big eyes and these frowny lines. And then this sort of line down the middle here is going to sort of bisect his skull. That's going to help us lay it in. So again, done that, easy peasy, bring it across. So transform, again, that's Command T, or you can go to Edit, Transform, which is about halfway down that menu. But I'm, like I said, oh, sorry, it's Free Transform. I'm a bit of a shortcut beast, so because I've been using Photoshop for so many years, I can just kind of do it automatically. And also because I have this drawing tablet, you can map certain key presses to these buttons down the side. So if I want to zoom in and out, or if I want to select my brushes, I've got a little button on the side here that I can use. And if I want to change my brush size, there's a pressure sensitive strip on the back of this Cintiq. And I'm just literally like moving my fingers up and down to change the brush size. You can see it getting bigger and smaller. That's really, really helpful. But again, like if you don't have digital stuff, or if you can't afford it, don't sweat it, because there are plenty of artists out there who do still work traditionally, like Nico Marley, who did designs for How to Train Your Dragon. He works on pencil and paper, and then they scan it in. There's another designer that I can't remember the name of who works on pencil and paper. So Photoshop is the kind of default, but I think even more these days, other programs like Procreate are becoming the norm, because you can save the files out as Photoshop files and they can be opened in Photoshop. I've done sketches for clients before that have all been in Procreate, and then I just send them to them as a JPEG. So you don't, you know, so for anybody out there who's worried about like, oh, do I have to use Photoshop and I can't afford a big fancy computer and things, there are ways that you can get around it. So don't be disheartened by that. And also remember that I'm a lot older than a lot of you, I imagine. I'm a granddad. So, you know, I can probably, you know, because I've been doing this for a while, I can afford gear when I need it, which is, you know, not a brag. It's just something to bear in mind. You know, when I was graduating college, I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, so I couldn't afford, you know, a drawing tablet or anything. But luckily, because I'm so old, they weren't invented then. So I was like, yay! I have to use pencil and paper. Right.
I think there's something to be said in that, though. I think there's always a way of doing it that's not, you know, creativity will find a way, you know. Absolutely,
and it doesn't matter, you know, it can be done on like a napkin, and it doesn't matter as long as the idea is good. And also there's definitely something to be said for like keeping up with traditional, because I work in digital all the time. It's like my traditional skills have gone rapidly downhill. Like I get scared by a pencil and paper because there's no undo button, right? It's like, oh my God, what if I make a mistake? Whereas on here, I can just turn the pen around and rub it out, right? But pencil and paper is just terrifying. And that's bad, because as an artist, it's like we shouldn't have fear of our materials. We should embrace the accidents and have control over things. But so if you do just work traditionally, then like more power to you, because, you know, give me some charcoal or some blooming oil paint and I'll be terrified. that's like my superhero kryptonite. It's like, let's take away his Photoshop
Let's take away the eraser on the end of his stylus and see how he goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's switch all of his shortcut keys around. So you can see that I've pushed this shape out here. Yeah, sorry, because he's leaning over, right? And I flatten the bottom of his bum off, even though it's curved on the left here, because I want you to feel the hard surface when you're looking at it, and the effect that it has on the skin is like it buckles his butt out. So let's put a real big crease there. And again,
so there's just a quick question about talking about how you change the size, how you select it and change the size. So maybe next time you do that, would you just be able to? Yeah, is that all right?
Yeah, no, I can do it now.
Okay.
Do you mean change the size of the drawing?
Like change the size of the when you select an area and you like adjust it?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so I probably will do that now. So I use the lasso tool, which is the third one down. Your Photoshop, by the way, will probably look different from mine because I put all my tools over on the right because I'm right-handed and it's just easy for me to get to them there. I don't want to be crossing myself the whole time trying to select things. I use the lasso tool, and then which you can see it makes this little lasso icon on the screen. And then I just click and hold and drag it round, and then sort of like let go, and it'll make this little selection around the ear here. And then again, I go to, it'll be edit, free transform, if you want to go through the menus, or if you're on a Mac, it's Command T, or a PC, it'll be Control and the T key, this is. And then you can just, you can grab these little sliders here, these little boxes, and just pull things out. And if you hold it over the corners, you'll see it turns into this sort of like bent arrow, and that means that you can rotate it. So you can click and drag, and if, like, for example, that ear that I drew, it's a bit straight. So if I want to, rather than redraw it, I can just, push it to the left and then hit enter. And then I might have to move this again to put it back in position. So if I click this top one here, the main selection tool, or press V on the keyboard to select it, I can just drag it there, and then I can hit enter. And then to deselect it, you go to select, deselect, which is the second one down. Or you can hit, in my case, Command D for deselect, and then now you're back up and running again, you can draw. But yeah, if anybody wants me to go through that again, then...
Thank you.
Okay.
We've also got, I think, quite a lovely question about what your favourite animated film of all time, or feature of all time is. What's your favourite animation? Wow. Is it short? Is it a feature length?
I've got a few that spring to mind. Aladdin's special to me because it was I loved that film when I was growing up. I mean, mainly for Robin Williams, but it still holds up now. Like, I love it's such a beautiful looking film, the colours and the style, and Glenn Keane worked on that, who's one of the great Disney designers. I was never really that into Beauty and the Beast, purely because I don't think I even just really saw it when I was a kid. But I love the Disney short called Paper Man. Is beautiful, and that's got a really interesting style. I find that as I've sort of gotten, dare I say it, older, or like certainly as I've kind of matured stylistically, I'm really drawn to things that have like pushed the visual boundaries. Like Into the Spider-Verse was fantastic, the Sony movie, because it just looked like nothing else that had been around. I mean, if I'm completely honest, I'm a little bit bored with the look of 3D at the moment because it all kind of looks the same after a while. I think that as a studio, I think Sony is the one that's kind of pushing the visual boundaries more at the moment. Like, they've got a new one on Netflix called, what's it called? It's kind of got, it's like a musical. It's not. Somebody will tell me in the chat. That looks really good because the characters aren't just super pushed. I love Klaus, the one I mentioned at the start, because again, that's a hybrid. It's like Paper Man. It's a hybrid of 2D and 3D. It was coloured on computers, but it was animated by hand. And I think it was in between the bloody computers as well. So it's got this kind of traditional look, but it's 3D, but it's sort of semi-3D animated. And I'd love to see more films that are made like that. I mean, Disney did it with Paper Man, and they also did it in the latest animated one, Raya and the Last Dragon. There was a sequence, like a flashback or something, that they animated in that style, and I was like, oh, awesome. And then it went back to like the main movie, and I was like, oh, it's just like CGI again. I like things that, which again is reflected in my style, the way that I work. I like weird stuff at the moment, like animations that look a bit bizarre and that look like take chances with pushing characters. I mean, I love Soul by Pixar because the characters, again, they were really pushed.
Yeah.
You know, there were those big hands, and the proportions were a bit sort of skew-if. Yeah, I love anything that's kind of.
So people have put in the chat Vivo. Is that?
Vivo, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, but the trailer looked great. Because yeah, super cartoony. The Mitchells versus the Machines was a really good one. I just think that had
a lot of people have put that in the chat too.
Yeah, that was great because again that was CG, but it was you know, they managed to get the classic sort of cartoony style eyes, you know, like these reading in 3D without them looking like big glassy balls. And there was an excellent sequence, I think I might have mentioned it before, where like this Furby runs amok in a shopping mall, and it was like the funniest thing ever. They get chased by a giant Furby. By the way, what I'm just doing, I should have done this before, but it's a good habit to get into for everybody is to flip your canvas. And what I mean by that is by like mirroring it, because it will refresh your eyes. Because if you've been drawing something, especially for a while, you want to, obviously my Photoshop's freezing now. You want to refresh your eyes so that you can see the mistakes. Like, I think that there's something wrong with this drawing, but I'm not really sure what, because I've been staring at it for so long. So if you go to, in Photoshop, if you go to image rotation, it's about halfway down, and then go to flip canvas horizontal, it will flip it around. And now I can see like, oh yeah, his head's too small. Because, you know, it's kind of almost reset my vision. So if you're having trouble with the drawing, and you're not really sure why, especially with things like eyes, because we have a tendency to draw eyes like one bigger than the other, or they're kind of like they're off a bit, you know, one's higher than the other, for example. If you flip your drawing, you'll see it straight away. I mean, it's the same thing as you get if you do a drawing, say late at night, and then you put it away until the next day, you wake up in the morning and you look at it and you go, oh my god, the ear is ridiculously too large.
What was I thinking?
Yeah, what the heck was I thinking? I can't believe I drew that, but like you probably wouldn't notice that unless you flipped your canvas or had that. The reason that you noticed it was because of that break that you had like overnight.
We have also had a question about the difference between, is there a difference between Photoshop and Illustrator for doing things like this?
Yeah, Illustrator is what's called a vector-based program, so it's for doing things like logos and stuff like that can be scaled to any size without degradation. Like you can make something in Illustrator and then print it out the size of a billboard and it won't be like jagged. But Photoshop is pixel based, so I'm basically drawing with pixels at the moment. So you can see that if I zoom in really, really far, you can start to see like the jagged edges on there. And that's because this is a pixel or raster based program, whereas Illustrator, if I was zoomed in on Illustrator, this would be a super smooth straight line, curved line, sorry, and there wouldn't be any kind of pixelation on it. And you can't, Illustrator doesn't have like, it's not set up for digital drawing, really. You'd have to use like a path tool, which the Photoshop does have, but you'd have to draw shapes out like using arcs like this, rather than, and then you'd fill that in for an eye if you wanted to draw it like that, which is like, nobody wants to do that. Instead of just selecting the brush tool and being like, way, you know?
Whee!
Yeah.
There was quite a good question earlier about what is the importance? Is it really important to learn about drawing anatomy?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you, well, I mean, if you want to be a character designer, it's kind of, well, one of the most important things. I think like any kind of art fundamentals are important. You know, that's anatomy, composition, color theory. You don't need to be a whiz at everything. Like, for example, I could do color okay, but they do have color stylists that work in productions whose job is to color things. That's their literal job. So you don't have to do everything. But certainly to design characters, you need to know anatomy, because again, it's all about knowing what it looks like in reality so that you can play with it and push it around. You know, you need to be able to draw a hand realistically in order to stylize it. Because you need to know like the basic shapes that involve in like the sort of mitten shape of the hand when it flexes, and the curve at the top of the palm and the straight at the bottom and the wedge shape of the thumb muscle. Things like that are things that you can be thinking of when you're designing cartoon hands, because you can push them about. And if you're designing animals, you know, you need to be able to draw animals I'm not saying you need to be able to draw every single animal in the world. And the process that I'm sort of showing you now is kind of a good way of analyzing an animal. Like I get jobs sometimes where I have to draw an animal character, and it's like, oh, can you do a koala that's, you know, I don't know, detective or something? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. Oh, I've never drawn a koala before in my entire life. So it's like, oh, I guess I've got to learn how to draw a koala in the next day. So I'll do something like this, and I'll just trace over the shapes of a koala, so I can get a feel for how their bodies are put together, and then I'll just sort of start designing from there. And that's all based in fundamental knowledge, you could argue. I mean, if I knew how to draw a koala from the start, I would have an advantage, right? The same as if you know how to draw a person, or you can draw a convincing person, it's easier to play about with it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you do your fundamentals, folks. I know that they're not fun, and I'm not like a figure master at all. You know, some of the people I draw are absolutely horrendous. But that's when you look at a photo, right? That's when reference.
Yeah.
And that's another important point. It's like, it's not cheating to look at reference. It's kind of, you know, forgive my frankness, but it's kind of stupid not to. It's like, if somebody says to me, can you design me a car? I'll be like, yeah, sure. And I'm not going to look at reference. So it's like, what are you going to get? Here's my car. Super awesome, right? This is the car that was. Like, can you design me a house? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Here's a house. Yeah, look at that. Like, put that in your film. You know. Or it's like, oh, I'll go and get loads of photos of cars, and then I'll actually learn how to draw them. And then, based on the previous comment that I made about anatomy, then I've got the information to stylize and exaggerate it. So anybody that says that using reference is cheating is just silly. And if you go back to, like, you know, it was good enough for Da Vinci, so I'm sure that I can do it. You know, people used to trace stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
And like, there's one thing that, sorry, I'm conscious of time. There's one thing that I've learned from working in the animation industry, especially in TV, it's that, like, take every shortcut you can just to get it done. When I was working for Netflix, doing, it's called a rigged show, right? So the characters are basically all, it's drawn in 2D, but it's rigged and animated computer. And they have like 5 body types to cover the cast. And it's like, can you design your character? Yeah, sure. Okay, use this body type. Take the hands off this character, so we don't have to spend the time re-rigging or redrawing them, because time equals money, right? So it's like, take the eyes off this character. You can move them wherever you want. You can resize them, but don't draw fresh eyes. Take the nose off this one. Make sure you use the colors that are on this one, and you can change the clothing to anything you want. And it's like, oh, that's cheating, because I'm just taking the old. And it's like, it doesn't matter as long as it gets done. It's like you've got 2 hours to do it, or you've got until tomorrow morning, and it's like, oh man, I haven't got time to draw it from scratch. And it's like, no, that's the whole point. It's like, it's all about time saving. So working in the animation industry has taught me to kind of be okay with that. When I was doing the Star Wars book, Emma, you're just gonna have to stop me talking, because I'll just talk forever. They gave me 3D models, and I drew over them. You know, I was drawing Star Destroyers and X-Wings. And because it's Star Wars and they have to be right, you know, I can't deviate from the designs. My art director sent me 3D scans from Lucasfilm, and were like, here's the Star Destroyer we want to use, here's the angle. And they put it on the book layout, and they'd be like, just draw over it. And I'm like, you know, I'm not going to sit there and be like, I'm going to draw it from scratch. Because if you've ever seen a Star Destroyer, it's really complicated. And I'm like, yeah, sure, cool, I'll do that.
I think it's really worth pointing out. We had a question earlier about copyright. And like, quite often I'll use references in my work, and as long as they're not, like, if you've got this image here, the image of the dog, even as long as you're not reproducing that exact image in what you're drawing, you're fine to use it as a reference to inform your drawings. Like, that's not, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't submit this as a design to an art director, because this isn't my photo for a start, and it is just like, literally, it's not copying, but it's kind of reinterpreting this that someone else has taken. I mean, you can shoot your own reference, obviously, and I do that for things like hand poses. I've done that before. You know, if I've got a tricky hand pose that I need to nail, I'll just take a photo of it on my phone and then use that as my reference. I did that for a job recently. But yeah, I would never take this photo and just do this and like, here's my idea. I'm doing this to learn. I'm doing this to learn about how this dog is constructed, so that I can then draw this from another angle, or I can change the proportions, or I can take this coat off and just have his like little body there, and I can just get rid of all the extraneous details. I've learned about the shape of his tail. It's this little kind of pointy triangle with a round bottom to it. So when I'm drawing him from another angle, I'll be like, that tail that I drew before, I'll have to make sure that I do it to that shape, And what I realised over time nearly, what I just did there was I changed the proportions again, because these dogs have got quite big heads. So I could make the head larger, or I could just make the body smaller. Same result, right? So that's what I did just then. I just repeat it. I just lassoed around his head, and also I made a copy of this layer by pulling and dragging it down to the plus that duplicates the layer, because it's always good to have a backup in case this doesn't work out. And then I just what I do? Sorry, no, I selected the body actually with the lasso tool again, and just hit Command T, and then I just scaled it down like that, because that makes his head look bigger in proportion, right? So it's little tricks like that you sort of get to learn as you're going along. And then I might need to redraw where the neck connects, things like that. It's not going to be right straight off the bat. Again, I'll flip it to see how that looks, and it's like, the head's a bit straight. I can probably tilt the head, because if you look at the reference, he's got this like little tilt to his chin, like that, which makes him look like he's going. So it's like, well, let's get that in there. But then now his lips too straight, so I'm going to have to, because of gravity, I'm going to straighten it down there like that. Straight some curves. Anyway, you probably want to be like, shut up, Dan, it's 4:15, because I am conscious of the time, believe it or not.
It is 4:15.
Multitasking, mate. I'm on it.
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, if you want to carry on drawing, and we can, if anyone's got any questions, for Dan.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I will answer. Right, I promise I will answer questions. Like, do a quick fire, because otherwise I'll just rabbit on about drawing hoods or something.
I also wonder if we wanted to share the Padlet, and we could quickly discuss some of the in the Padlet. Did you? If I share my screen, that will stop your screen sharing. Is that okay?
That's fine. That's fine. I'll carry on, but I'll be looking on my other monitor, so that's cool.
Sweet.
Let me know when
I'm
done.
Just share this. Hold on.
Before you do that, can I just, has this been, I know that I was talking for a lot of this, and that I probably wasn't explaining as I went quite a lot, but has this been sort of helpful in terms of like, this is how you break down a reference image and draw from it? Because I want to make sure that people kind of got something out of it,
George has said, I think this has been pretty helpful. So
okay, I'll take that.
And yes, it's been great. It's been very helpful. Yes, awesome. So I'm thinking that yes, it's been good.
Thank you. That's great. That's all I want to
know. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Can you see that, Dan?
Yes, I can see it. Oh, cool. Awesome. Oh, wow.
I think Tom's busy approving new.
Wow, you guys have done tons.
They're brilliant, aren't they?
Yeah, there's loads. Oh, I like the bad dog. More than the bad dog, he's crying. That's cool.
Oh, hang on. This one.
Yeah.
They keep like moving around.
Great. And there's a picture of me that I can see.
I'm quite enjoying this one.
Which one's that? Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah, I like that you got the. So I drew that kid earlier as practice as a warm up, and I'm glad that you got like the hooded eyes on there, because they were a really big thing. When I was drawing that kid, I was thinking about like, oh, if I got a job designing, say, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, I would use this kind of kid as like the Charlie Bucket character, because he looked really tired.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's another reason why you would do this, because it's like, oh, I can remember that kid that I drew. I can use that as the basis for my design. Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat, and Lisa said, which apple and onion characters did you design? I didn't design any. I did a piece of bacon. I came on board when the characters were already designed, so I just had to do like the turnarounds and some key poses for the animation team, and some prop design and stuff. It was a really fun job, but I didn't actually get to design any characters. Oh, that's a cool one. I love
Isn't it great?
Push the hair on that. Yeah, awesome.
I really like the red image.
Yes, yeah, it's a really good analysis, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really nice and simple. Remember to keep it simple when you're doing those.
Lovely.
Zoom out if you can.
Mm.
Yeah, that's very cool. Oh, there's tons.
Lovely.
Cool.
I like this. This one's been done in pencil and paper.
Yeah, and she's got that great small mouth, right? She's made everything else seem bigger, so that's really cool. Excuse me.
Love these.
Yeah, brilliant. especially, I know this, they probably won't agree, but especially that one on the left, because he's like really squished and really thin.
Sure.
So if I was doing this, it's like, well, what's he shaped like? It's kind of shaped like a bowling pin, isn't he? Right. So that's kind of the shape that I would go for when I was doing my designs. Really tall and thin. Yeah,
just so you know, you can actually save. You should be able to save some of the images. So all of the reference images are down here.
Oh yeah.
You should be able to save those so you can practice them using them. I know that was a question in the in the chat.
That one that you've got on screen now, the one called Human Reference 3, the guy with the hair. I looked at him and I was like, Jack Frost, right?
Yes.
If I was doing a design for Jack Frost, it's like his hair looks like it's kind of frozen back in his head, and he's got that. He's really pale. So that's, and he's almost even wearing like a top that I would imagine that fancy character to have. So humans can influence your design sparks like as soon as you look at them sometimes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
So you can, so say if I did want to save that image to use, I can click on it and then I can right click and I can save the image. I'm not sure what that is on Mac. I'm assuming it would be.
It's probably the same, yeah.
Yeah. So if you did want to save those images, those reference images, they're all there. Are there any that stand out to you, Dan?
Hang on a sec. I like the, just go back again. It was the, oh, I love that cat. Sorry, I'm pointing at it like you can see. In the bottom right hand corner now, I love the fact that they've put an eye patch and stuff on, as like sort of like made them into a robot. That's really,
yes.
Yeah.
This one.
Really, yeah, totally. Because that's like why we use, references jumping off point. So it's like, and it can come from anywhere. So if you want to do like a cyberpunk design, it's like, oh, I'm just going to pick a random face off the internet and use that as the basis for it. There was a really cool cat just now. Like the wrinkles were great, but also, that pug's really fun. There
this one
on top, yeah, just because the ears are massive.
Yeah,
love that. Anything that's squished in my bag. Yeah, totally. Oh, and that one on the right hand side now, that the next one down, the turban one. Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, that's great.
Magic.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Just like there's lots of triangles in there. Really great shape design. He's got a pointy top, he's got a pointy nose, pointy eyebrows, pointy eyes, and a pointy beard. So that's a great example of like pushing shape. Like think about Jafar, characters like that. They're all based on fundamental shapes, which is a really good starting point for any character design. Cool. Yeah, it's all great, and it's nice to see a mix of traditional and digital. Like, I'm sorry if it were the fact that I was working digitally, probably doesn't help a lot of traditional artists. But again, it's like lay some, just to recap, like take your reference image, lay some tracing paper over the top, or another sheet of paper on a light box. Trace the main shapes and then put them next to each other, and then you use a new sheet of paper as the basis of your drawing. And then just instead of drawing over the top of it like I was sometimes and erasing bits out, you just have to manually erase them and redraw them, sadly, because that's something that's good in digital, it's a bit quicker. And if you wanted to transform anything, you'd have to just redraw it. But this is a process that you can do in both ways. I love that one on the left hand side here, Old Man and Kate the cat, the old man. And the cat.
Yes.
Yeah, because he looks.
He looks so sad.
Yeah, he's really sad.
It's making me a bit emotional.
And the cat's just like got so much attitude.
Maybe he's what made the cat's what made the man sad.
Yeah.
I really like this meerkat. And the tiny head.
Yeah, big feet. I love
it. Total joy. So we've got about a few minutes left of the workshop. Has anyone got any more questions for Dan before we wrap up? You can put those in the chat.
If you think of any questions, by the way, afterwards, you can message me on like Instagram.
Joy, and we do have Dan's Instagram link, so we will put that in the chat for you in a second.
I might not reply straight away, but you know, if you've got
any. Joy, I think we'll. Is there any free digital app to practice on? I think you did mention some.
Well, there's one. Excuse me. There's one called Sketchbook. Hang on a moment. I just need to try and minimize the screen so I can check the link. Because what I'll do is I'll put it in the chat. 1 moment. How do I need to make this?
I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll look. Yeah, do that, and then I'll reshare mine. Can you see my screen again?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I just think it's called Sketchbook now. It used to be it's mobile and it's computer. This used to be paid, I think, but now it's free. It's one that I've seen other artists use. One of the guys who worked on Klaus, the guy who directed it, actually uses Sketchbook. There's some videos of him on YouTube using it. That's a free one. And like I say, it's on iPad, but it is on desktop as well. It's just very similar to Photoshop. You know, you can see on here. It's got brushes and pencils and everything in it. And it'll take, like with any software, it'll take a while if you haven't used it before. So there's a bit of a learning curve. But once you know the ins and outs of it, it's just super intuitive. Because I've been using Photoshop for years, so it's only the repetition of using it every day that means that I can use it quickly. But there's 10,000 things I don't know how to do in Photoshop. I just use it for what I need it for. So you don't have to learn everything about every piece of software ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, sketchbook.com. If you want to download and try that one.
Right.
And I think there's one called Krita, Krita. I don't know if that's free still. Oh yeah, it's a professional free and open source painting program. So there's one, krita.org. And I think GIMP is free still as well. That's like
I think so.
Photoshop, isn't it? Yeah. So GIMP, Krita, or Sketchbook.
Lovely.
Cool. Any other questions?
Let me just have a look. Do you have a favourite character? Like a favourite character design that's not yours?
Oh, This is going to make me sound really old, right? Garfield is one of my classic designs. Yoda, just in terms of like perfect shape design. Skeletor, like all, and I love like old school Skeletor just because he's hilarious. And that old He-Man animated show, not the new one, the old one, the 80s one, has such great color palettes because they're so simple, they're so graphic. Probably can't see them, but I've got some He-Man figures behind me on the shelf. Yeah, those are great. And in terms of films, like I love Julie Hopps is one of my favorite character designs from Zootopia. Just such a great design by Corey Loftus, who's such a great character designer. If you don't know who he is, go and look at his stuff. He's got a really wicked sense of humor, but he's just an excellent draftsman. He was the character design sort of lead on Zootopia, and yeah, brilliant mixture of kind of old style Disney and new like CGI style. So yeah. Like Robin Hood is one of my favorites as well. I like animals.
When I was young, I used to have a bit of a crush on the Fox Robin Hood.
I think everybody did.
Yeah, right? He was just like a hero.
He's like the gateway drug. Can you remember there was a show called The Wuzzles that used to be on? You're probably too young for that. That was a Disney animated thing with cartoon characters in. And yeah, it's weird how those sort of anthropomorphized animals can affect you when you're younger. Probably shouldn't say any more about that. This is nice wrap up.
That's a nice way to wrap up.
I guess if we're going to go out on a high, we might as well go out.
Yeah, right. So just there have been some NUA specific questions. So there was a question about Norwich University of the Arts offering a foundation course. We don't technically offer a foundation, but we do offer a year zero for all of our courses. So a year zero is slightly different to a foundation. A foundation will allow you to explore like a range of different subjects if you're unsure or uncertain of which subject it is that you want to pursue. Whereas a year zero is a bit more of an intro into a specific course, and it will allow you to build your portfolio within that course before you go on to 3-year study. I hope that helps. I hope you don't mind, Dan, that I just answered that question.
No, totally.
Cool. So before we do finish up today, I do want to remind you that we have a wide range of workshops that are available across the summer school. So you will be able to access these through recordings, or you can join us for the live events. These do cover a huge range of practices. So tomorrow we do have promoting drag culture with drag guru Liv. We also have things like thinking like a UX designer with Claire Pougiard, directing frame to frame. So there's a wide range of subjects that you can get involved with. All of our workshops are designed to give you an insight into lots of different areas that your creativity could take you and suggest many different jobs that exist. If you haven't already, you can book your place on the website, and we are going to send you a link for those in the chat right now. We are also offering you the opportunity to receive an official NUA certificate, which is great to talk about in any UCAS personal statement that you might be putting together. To get hold of one of these certificates, you'll just need to attend 6 of the 12 workshops, and we want to see outcomes from at least 3 of those workshops. So one of the outcomes that you've done from this session might count towards one of those three outcomes. Just so you know that if you do submit work, it may be used in future promotion of information for the series. You can send your 3 outcomes to us by email at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk. I will put that, or Tom will put that in the chat for you right now. So these outcomes can be something you've made as part of the workshop, or something you've made afterwards in response to the workshop. We also would really love to see what you're making throughout the summer school series. So do tag us in photos of your workshop or outcomes on Instagram. The handles for that are @NUA Outreach and @TakeYourPlace_HE. We will be sharing some of our favourite pieces throughout the series, so do get involved. I think we're going to put those in the chat right now. Each week we'll also be giving away a Chili's bottle. So all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning this is to complete the feedback form that we'll be sending you by email at the end of each week. So lots of chances to get exciting things. Just to close, thank you so much to Dan for running the workshop today, and thank you everyone for joining us, and also thank you for just being generally lovely in the chat. You've all been really, really nice, really supportive of each other, and it's really lovely to
can I just say also, sorry, just to interrupt, just like looking through the chat, somebody said, oh, it's so nice to see everybody and know that I'm like, everyone's just an art nerd like me, and like I'd say, like, definitely take that to heart. Like we're all strange artists at the end of the day, but like honestly, this is like the community for you. It's like everybody's so nice, and so I'm so glad that everyone's been nice to each other and had a good sort of chat and stuff while I've been working. So I hope that you guys
for sure.
Sorry, back to you.
That is it. That is all I have to say, Dan.
Okay, cool.
I hope you've all had as much fun as I have, because I've had a really great time. So feel free to leave now, and we will make sure that we send you the recording as soon as we can.
Cup of tea.
Definitely.
Thanks everyone. And thanks for running the session as well, Anne.
Oh, thank you for being great, and for wearing such a wonderful t-shirt. and your special gloves.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave now. So thanks everybody, and
I will end the meeting now.
Cheerio. Bye.